Sometimes, the most luxurious royal jewels aren't the ones passed down through centuries of British history. They appear suddenly, arriving as magnificent gestures of friendship from the kings and sultans of the Middle East. From the heavy Saudi diamonds to the lustrous pearls of the Gulf, these treasures entered the royal vaults quietly, and then, often, vanished from view for years. Today, I want to open this specific, glittering chapter of the royal collection. We will look at the Eastern gifts that were perhaps too lavish to wear, the pieces the Queen secretly transformed, and the jewels that are still hidden in plain sight today. Before we begin, please support my channel by clicking on the like and subscribe buttons. Thank you. When we think of the Queen's jewelry box, we often picture heirlooms passed down from Queen Victoria or Queen Mary. But there is a whole other chapter in the royal vaults, one written in the language of modern diplomacy and absolutely spectacular diamonds. Starting in the 1960s, the Saudi royal family became significant clients of the legendary jeweler Harry Winston, and during state visits, they often arrived with gifts that were nothing short of breathtaking. These weren't just tokens of friendship, they were serious examples of high jewelry. Let's start with a piece that is essentially pure, concentrated sparkle, the King Faisal necklace. In May 1967, King Faisal of Saudi Arabia traveled to the United Kingdom for a state visit. He didn't come empty-handed. He presented Her Majesty with a diamond necklace that he had purchased from Harry Winston just a couple of months earlier. It is a substantial piece, set in platinum with more than 300 stones, weighing in at over 80 carats. The design is incredibly intricate, typical of Winston's work from the early 1950s. If you look closely, you can see it isn't just a simple chain. It features 3 distinct rows of diamonds, a line of baguettes, a row alternating baguettes with brilliance, and a third row of diamond loops, all finishing with those 11 magnificent pear-shaped pendants. The Queen debuted the necklace almost immediately, wearing it for the return banquet hosted at Claridge's Hotel. She clearly found it a fitting piece for diplomatic occasions. She even packed it for her own state visit to Saudi Arabia in 1979, wearing the king's gift back to his homeland. In 1983, the Queen lent the necklace to the Princess of Wales for her tour of Australia. Diana wore it for a charity ball in Sydney, pairing it with the Collingwood pearl drop earrings. Much later, in 2012, we saw it on the Duchess of Edinburgh. She wore it to the pre-wedding gala for the hereditary Grand Duke of Luxembourg, pairing the necklace with the 5 aquamarine tiara. However, it has been quite a few years since this intricate piece made a public appearance. It is such a classic design. I would love to see one of the royal ladies bring it out of the vaults for a future state banquet. While that piece was all about complex loops and mixed cuts, our next treasure takes a more geometric approach to brilliance. In 1979, the Queen visited Saudi Arabia during an extensive tour of the Middle East. This time, the gift came from King Khaled. It was another Harry Winston creation, made just a year or two before the presentation. This is the King Khaled necklace, and once you see it, you recognize it instantly. It has a beautiful fringe design, with 20 pear-shaped diamond pendants radiating out like sun rays from a central diamond band. Many of you might recognize this necklace because Diana famously wore it to the Barbican Center in March 1982. She was pregnant with Prince William at the time and paired the diamonds with a flowing red maternity gown. For the Queen, this necklace became a firm favorite, likely because it solved a stylistic puzzle. It matches one of her most beloved tiaras, the Girls of Great Britain and Ireland, almost perfectly. The tiara has a very distinct geometric design with spikes, and the radiating fringe of the King Khaled necklace echoes that shape beautifully. They look so harmonious together that they appear to be a matching set created by the same jeweler, even though they were made nearly a century apart. The Queen wore this combination frequently over the decades, including for a banquet in Singapore in 1989, and, much more recently, for the annual diplomatic reception in 2018. The next major diamond necklace in our story is widely known as the King Fahd necklace. While the palace hasn't explicitly confirmed the provenance in writing, the timing tells us almost everything we need to know. The late Queen debuted this piece in March 1987, specifically at the banquet she hosted for King Fahd of Saudi Arabia. It is a classic chandelier style, featuring diamond clusters that drop down into a pear shape. It came with matching earrings that perfectly mimic the centerpiece of the necklace. Queen Elizabeth II wore this demi-parure for years, including for the Royal Variety performance in 2005. Towards the end of her reign, she loaned these diamonds to the Duchess of Edinburgh, then the Countess of Wessex, for the American state banquet in 2019. It is wonderful to see that under the new reign of King Charles and Queen Camilla, the Duchess continues to have access to this magnificent set. She wore the necklace and earrings again just recently for the state banquet in honor of the Emperor of Japan, and I must say, the design suits her perfectly. The Princess of Wales has also worn pieces from this suite. In 2019, for the diplomatic reception at Buckingham Palace, Catherine wore the Lover's Knot tiara and the Nizam of Hyderabad necklace. But if you looked closely, the earrings weren't part of the Nizam set. They were these King Fahd chandelier earrings. It is lovely to see how these diplomatic gifts have quietly become shared family treasures, moving seamlessly between the generations. The tours of the late 70s brought a wave of spectacular color into the royal vaults. And this is where we see a different side of the Queen. Not just as a wearer of jewels, but as a curator who wasn't afraid to take them apart to make them work for her. In 1979, the Queen's travels took her to the Gulf states, and during a stop in Dubai, Sheikh Rashid presented her with a suite of jewelry made by Asprey. It was a very modern set for the time, featuring large oval sapphires surrounded by loops of diamonds. We don't often hear about the Queen's immediate emotional reactions to the gifts she received, but the author, Leslie Field, reported that Her Majesty actually exclaimed in amazement when she opened this box. The sapphires were large and perfectly matched. However, the Queen decided the necklace design needed some adjustments to fit her own routine. She had the necklace shortened, removing some of the sapphire loops, but she didn't leave those spare parts sitting in a drawer. The removed sections were made into a new, smaller pair of drop earrings. She then took the original, larger earrings and the central cluster from the ring and had them made into a bracelet. It effectively turned one heavy set into a much more usable collection. You might have spotted the result of that alteration quite recently. In May 2021, Catherine, the Princess of Wales, then the Duchess of Cambridge, attended a drive-in cinema event in Scotland. She wore a pair of sapphire earrings that looked quite delicate. They were those spare links from the Dubai necklace that the Queen had converted years before. It was nice to see them being used for a fun, less formal evening. Alongside these altered pieces, there are two modern sets in the vaults that are worth looking at side by side because they are almost identical in structure. The first is known as the Emerald Tassel Suite. The necklace has a very distinct knotted design at the center, with a tassel of gem-set chains hanging down. It's set in yellow gold, which gives it a warmer look than the Queen's older pieces. She wore the full set, necklace, earrings, bracelet, and ring, for a dinner with President Obama in 2011. It is believed to be a gift from Sheikh Zayed of the United Arab Emirates. Catherine has dipped into this collection as well. During her tour of Jamaica in 2022, she wore the earrings and the bracelet from this emerald suite for a dinner at King's House. The knot design looked very contemporary on her. But if you look through the archives, you can find a second suite, a sapphire tassel necklace, that mirrors the emerald one almost exactly. The knot, the cascade of the tassel, the setting style, they all point to the same maker. The Queen wore the sapphire version much less frequently, though it did appear at a Saudi state banquet in 2002. Seeing them together gives us a clue that these weren't random selections, but likely part of a consistent collection gifted over the years. While the tassels were perhaps a bit experimental, other gifts from the Gulf states fit much more traditionally into the Queen's wardrobe, though they certainly brought a change in scale. In 1979, during that same tour that took her to Dubai, the Queen visited Qatar. On this occasion, the Emir presented her with a pearl and diamond demi-parure. Now, we are used to seeing the Queen in pearls every day, But this necklace is in a different league entirely. It features 6 strands of pearls connected by diamond spacers. It is a substantial piece, and because of its size, it wasn't something she reached for casually. Instead, the Queen seemed to save this set for moments where she wanted to make a specific diplomatic gesture. She wore it for the gala banquet during that initial visit to Qatar in 1979, showing immediate appreciation. Then, she kept it in the vault for the right moments, bringing it out again decades later for a state banquet at Windsor Castle in 2010 to honor the visiting Emir of Qatar. On both occasions, she paired it with the Vladimir tiara hung with pearl drops, letting the 6 strands of the necklace balance out the height of the tiara. The connection with Qatar continued in the mid-80s. When the Emir made a state visit to the UK in 1985, he arrived with Rubies. He gifted the Queen a diamond swag necklace featuring 2 large central rubies, along with matching earrings. The design is quite distinct because it uses cabochon rubies, smooth, polished stones rather than faceted ones, set in rich yellow gold. The Queen seemingly found this set much easier to wear than the massive 6-strand pearls. She began wearing it almost immediately, and she brought it out for the most solemn occasions in the royal calendar, including the state opening of Parliament. She also packed them for important overseas trips, wearing them for a dinner at the Élysée Palace in Paris and for a state banquet in Turkey. Interestingly, she almost always paired this modern yellow gold necklace with the Burmese ruby tiara. Even though the tiara is much older and the necklace is quite modern, the deep red of the stones tied the look together perfectly. Before we close the Queen's jewelry box and move on to the next generation, there is one final piece that really stands out, mostly because it was such a departure from Her Majesty's usual style. If you look back at the Queen's fashion over the decades, you will notice she famously avoided chokers. While her grandmother, Queen Mary, lived in high, tight collars, and Princess Diana later made chokers trendy again, Elizabeth almost always stuck to necklaces that rested comfortably on the collarbone. That is why this piece is such an anomaly. In 1992, during a state visit to Germany, the Queen debuted a striking gold and diamond necklace that sits high and tight on the neck, almost like a rigid cuff. It is composed of vertical bars of diamonds set in yellow gold. While the palace has never confirmed the donor, the design bears all the hallmarks of a modern Middle Eastern diplomatic gift. The Queen clearly decided to make an exception to her no-choker rule for this piece. She even paired it with her bold, multicolored harlequin gown for the Royal Variety performance in 1999. A rare moment where we saw the monarch embracing a truly glitzy show business aesthetic. Like many of the jewels we've discussed today, this one has also been shared within the family. The Duchess of Edinburgh borrowed this cuff for a charity ball at the Tower of London in 2016. It's fascinating how this mysterious golden piece, which looked so unusual on the Queen in the 90s, translated effortlessly into a modern black tie look for Sophie years later. But when it came to truly reinventing these Eastern gifts, no one pushed the boundaries quite like the Princess of Wales. In 1981, Crown Prince Fahd of Saudi Arabia sent a wedding gift to Lady Diana Spencer that remains one of the most substantial jewelry suites in royal history. It arrived in an elaborate malachite and gold box. Inside lay a complete parure created by Asprey, a diamond necklace with a massive Burmese sapphire pendant in a sunray fringe, matching earrings, a ring, a bracelet, and a watch. The sheer volume of gems was overwhelming for a 19-year-old. Upon seeing the set, Diana famously exclaimed, "Gosh, and I don't even know this man!" She clearly warmed to the gift quickly, however, as she began wearing pieces from the suite constantly. The deep blue stones perfectly complemented her famous engagement ring, and she took the set with her on tours all over the world, from Australia to Canada. But Diana didn't just wear the suite as it was given to her. She mixed and matched it with a stylist's eye. She would sometimes remove the sapphire pendant from the necklace and replace it with the Prince of Wales feathers brooch, creating a completely different look. She was also quite inventive with the smaller pieces. Later research suggests she took the heavy sapphire watch and had the face removed, replacing it with a sapphire cluster, likely the ring from the same suite, to turn it into a dazzling bracelet. Her collection held other modern Eastern treasures as well. In 1986, during a tour of the Gulf states, the Sultan of Oman presented her with a geometric sapphire and diamond suite. The design features distinct crescent shapes, a subtle nod to the national symbol of Oman. Diana debuted this set in Germany in 1987. In a bold styling move, she paired this very modern, angular necklace with her family's antique floral Spencer tiara. The contrast between the 19th century scrollwork of the tiara and the sharp 80s design of the sapphires was striking. She continued to wear this set well into the 90s, proving that even official state gifts could be adapted to her unique personal style. It wasn't just Diana who found herself on the receiving end of this Middle Eastern generosity. Throughout the 1980s, the Saudi royals established a clear pattern. When a British royal married, the bride received a parure. When Sarah Ferguson married Prince Andrew in 1986, becoming the Duchess of York, she received a demi-parure of diamonds and rubies. It came from the Saudi royal family, effectively serving as the red counterpart to Diana's blue sapphires. The design of Sarah's necklace is quite distinctive. It features a pointed, almost serpent-like shape of diamonds and rubies that sits flat against the neck with coordinating earrings. She took this set on her very first official tour to Canada in 1987, wearing it for a dinner along with her diamond wedding tiara. We saw it again during a tour of Australia in 1990. Like Diana's sapphires, this gift predates the strict rules we have today regarding official gifts. That means the suite is almost certainly Sarah's personal property. Although she hasn't worn it publicly in decades, it likely remains in her private collection. Perhaps one day we will see Princess Beatrice or Princess Eugenie bring these 80s rubies back into the spotlight. The Princess Royal also possesses a ruby and diamond suite that is widely believed to be a gift from the Saudi royal family, likely presented during King Fahd's state visit to the UK in 1987. Princess Anne debuted the necklace and earrings at the return banquet held at Claridge's Hotel in March of that year. The set features a diamond necklace with a V-shaped central element suspending a cluster of rubies and diamonds, along with matching earrings. The Princess Royal wore the suite for a number of high-profile events in the late 1980s, including a banquet at the Guildhall in 1988 and for official formal portraits. However, like so many of the diplomatic treasures we are exploring today, this suite has spent the last few decades in the shadows, unseen by the public eye. The next chapter brings us back to the tradition of receiving grand, unaltered parures. When Camilla joined the royal family, the diplomatic gifts from the Gulf states didn't stop. In fact, the scale of them seemed to increase. In March 2006, Charles and Camilla undertook an official tour of Saudi Arabia. When Clarence House released the official gift list afterwards, it was quite revealing. The Duchess of Cornwall had received 3 separate parures, 1 sapphire, 1 emerald, and 1 ruby. It was an extraordinary haul from a single trip. Camilla has worn the sapphire and emerald sets from this visit on several occasions. You might remember the emeralds from the premiere of Peter Pan in Kensington Gardens, or the sapphires which she debuted at a Prince's Trust gala. But the ruby set from that 2006 trip is the one that really gets people talking. She wore the ruby necklace just once, for a concert in Philadelphia in 2007. When you look at the photos, you can see why it hasn't made a return appearance. It features 37 rubies set in a very rigid geometric diamond framework. It covers so much of the décolletage that royal watchers have actually given it a nickname, the ruby breastplate. It looks less like a necklace and more like a piece of ceremonial armor. Many jewelry fans have debated what should be done with it. Some say it should be dismantled. Others dream of turning that rigid base into a modern bandeau tiara. It is a stunning example of the sheer volume of gems available to the Saudi royals, but as a necklace, it is perhaps a bit too heavy, even for a queen. However, the Saudi royal family clearly understood that a lady can never have too many rubies. In 2013, Charles and Camilla returned to the Middle East, and King Abdullah presented her with yet another parure. Most experts believe this gift is the second ruby necklace we have seen Camilla wear. She debuted it at the premiere of the second-best exotic marigold hotel in 2015. Now, compared to the first necklace, this design is certainly different, but it is still a massive, high-impact piece of jewelry. While the breastplate from 2006 was rigid and geometric, this newer necklace is designed as a complex, multi-strand bib. It features pear-shaped rubies in a diamond setting that drapes over the neck like a heavy garland. It is interesting to see these two gifts side by side. Both are incredibly opulent, heavy luxury pieces that few people could pull off. But where the first one looked almost industrial in its geometry, the second one brings a softer, more floral aesthetic, even if the carat weight is just as intimidating. It seems Camilla is one of the few royal ladies who can carry off these grand, wall-to-wall gemstones with confidence. While Camilla was receiving grand parures that recalled the opulence of an earlier era, the younger generation of royal women has integrated Eastern gifts into their wardrobes in a different way. The jewels are still spectacular, but unlike the official gift lists released by Clarence House for Charles and Camilla, these modern treasures are often surrounded by a bit more mystery. Take, for instance, a particular set of rubies worn by Catherine. In December 2011, the then Duchess of Cambridge attended the Sun Military Awards. It was her first year as a royal, and she chose a strapless black velvet gown by Alexander McQueen for the occasion. Against that dark velvet, her jewelry stood out immediately. She wore a necklace and matching bracelet that were quite unlike anything we had seen from the Queen's vaults. The necklace is a fringe design, constructed of diamond circles and floral motifs, with ruby blooms acting as the centerpieces. The palace never officially confirmed the provenance of this demi-parure, simply stating it was a wedding gift. However, jewel watchers quickly identified the design. It bears the unmistakable signature of Mouawad. Mouawad is a luxury jewelry house with Lebanese roots and a headquarters in Switzerland, but they have a very specific clientele. They have created jewelry for Middle Eastern royalty for decades. Seeing Catherine in a Mouawad suite was a quiet but clear signal. It suggests that this wedding gift almost certainly came from a wealthy admirer in the Middle East. We saw a similar moment at the BAFTAs in 2018. Catherine walked the red carpet in a dark green dress, wearing a suite of emeralds and diamonds. While the palace remains tight-lipped about the giver, the style speaks for itself. It is modern Eastern classicism, expensive, substantial, but light enough to wear for a black-tie dinner without looking like you are wearing a crown jewel. However, Catherine has only worn these sets a couple of times. In fact, we haven't seen the rubies in years, and the emeralds seem to have returned to the vault immediately after their red carpet debut. It adds a layer of mystery. Are they being saved for a future state occasion, or were they just fleeting visitors in her rotation? Speaking of Eastern classics, we need to talk about a pair of earrings that sparked a real investigation among jewelry lovers. During her tour of Fiji in 2018, the Duchess of Sussex attended a state dinner wearing a blue cape dress. She accessorized it with a pair of incredibly impressive diamond chandelier earrings. Visually, they are stunning. A cascade of white diamonds featuring a mix of cuts, from baguettes to rounds. At the time, everyone assumed these were made by Chopard, the famous Swiss house. But sharp-eyed royal watchers noticed something interesting. They dug through archives and found an identical design on the Instagram page of Bhutani, a high-end jeweler based in Hong Kong. We now know that these were a wedding gift from Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman of Saudi Arabia. Regardless of the debates that later surrounded the giver, looking at the earrings purely from a design perspective, they are fascinating. Unlike the heavy breastplates given to Camilla, these are surprisingly fluid and modern. However, while diamonds represent status, pearls often represent something far more personal. And this brings us to the final and perhaps most touching item in our Eastern collection. If you want to understand the continuity of the royal family, you have to look at the Bahrain pearl drop earrings. The story of these pearls starts long before Catherine or even Diana. It begins in November 1947 at the wedding of Princess Elizabeth and Lieutenant Philip Mountbatten. Among the mountains of gifts was a shell presented by the Hakim of Bahrain. Inside that shell were 7 large, lustrous pearls. 2 of these pearls were selected to create a pair of drop earrings. The design is quintessential late 40s elegance. A round diamond stud, followed by a small baguette diamond, another round diamond, and finally, the Bahrain pearl hanging below. The Queen wore these constantly in her early years as a monarch. You can see them in her official portraits from the 50s. As she grew older, she began lending them out, first to Diana, then to Sophie, and finally to Catherine. In recent years, the Princess of Wales has become the primary custodian of these earrings. She has worn them for happy occasions, like Royal Ascot, where they look lovely with a summer hat. But they have also taken on a much deeper meaning. Catherine chose to wear these earrings for the funeral of Prince Philip in 2021. Then, a year later, she wore them again for the state funeral of Queen Elizabeth II. There is a beautiful symmetry to that choice. These pearls were given to Elizabeth on the occasion of her marriage to Philip. By wearing them to say goodbye to both of them, Catherine closed the circle. It transformed a diplomatic gift from a Bahraini ruler into a deeply personal symbol of family memory. And that, I think, is the true power of these royal jewels. They start as formal objects of state, but over decades, they become the keepers of the family's history. Looking at all these treasures, it is impossible to ignore the complex questions they raise today. Many of you might wonder, in the modern world, how appropriate are such lavish gifts? It is important to remember that for the royal family, receiving these jewels is rarely a personal choice. It is a diplomatic duty. To refuse a gift from a strategic ally would be a grave insult. However, the rules have changed significantly over the years. While in the past, gifts like Diana's sapphires could be considered personal property, today, items like Camilla's rubies or Meghan's earrings are officially part of the royal collection. They don't belong to the women who wear them, they belong to the crown. They are simply held in trust for the next generation. So, whether we see them as controversial symbols of soft power or simply as breathtaking examples of gemology, one thing is certain: they remain a fascinating part of visual history, documenting the shifting tides of global politics in diamonds and gold. We have looked at quite a variety of styles today, from heavy ruby breastplates to delicate pearls. Which of these hidden treasures would you most like to see brought out of the vault for the next state banquet? Personally, I have to admit I have a soft spot for those classic white diamond necklaces we saw at the very beginning. To me, that Harry Winston design is just timeless perfection. But let me know your favorites in the comments below. If you enjoyed this journey into the royal vaults, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel for more stories about the history behind the sparkle. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.